Hello and welcome. Ukraine is developing a weapon system with a range of 360 kilometers with a huge warhead ready to strike targets all over its occupied territory, probably among it the Kerch Bridge. This and more in this situation report. On the front line north of the Seversky Donetsk, we have fairly little development. The fighting is still concentrating more or less south of the area of Makivka. This time, in the last 2 days, I have reports about fighting close to Dibrova, attacks in the direction of Torske, attacks in the direction of Nevske, and there are fighting southwest. There's fighting southwest of Kremina here in the forest. South of the Seversky Donetsk, we have reports about fighting around Bilohorivka and Vorgonzo, which is one of the big pro-Russian Telegram channels, is saying that the Ukrainians counterattacked in Bilohorivka and gained some ground. So there was some gain in territory by the Ukrainians. Other than that, close to Bakhmut, there's continued fighting. We have reports about Russian attacks in the direction of Privilya. No reports of successes by the Russians here. We have reports about fighting close to Khomove, which is here. Also, no confirmation of Russian successes. And in Bakhmut, the fighting is continuing. There are some rumors about the Russians gaining some ground, but nothing really substantial. So while it's possible that they gained a street here and a block there, there is definitely no massive shift in control of Bakhmut over the last 2 days, and we even have it here again in the same posting from Vorgonzo as an example. After massive artillery and airstrikes attacks in southern, western, and northern regions of Bakhmut, there is no significant progress. So while the fighting continues, Bakhmut is still roughly 20 to 25% of Bakhmut is still in Ukrainian hands. Outside of Bakhmut, south of it or southwest of it, Ivanivske was attacked again, or there were attacks again in the direction of Ivanivske. They were without any success. And further south around Avdiivka, the fighting is also continuing. The usual names from the past: attacks in the direction of Novokalinove. The Russians are claiming they gained some ground at Novobakhmutivka. I cannot confirm that. Attacks in the direction of Stepove, Siverne, in Pervomaiske, and in the direction of Nevelske. No confirmation of change of territory here. In Marinka, the fighting is also continuing. Russians are also attacking in the direction of Novomykhailivka and in the direction of Pobieda. Further south of it, here at Vuleda, we have reports about renewed Russian attacks. 2 days ago, they were attacking north in the direction of Vuleda and north from the town of Mykilske, and geolocated not without any proven success. And we have geolocated successes by the Ukrainians south of Novosilka. We have no knowledge though when that was done, but the front line is roughly in this area, is a little bit south than initially anticipated, but it's marginal. So basically, the front line is 50 to 100 meters further south of what was initially anticipated. No change whatsoever that is really worth mentioning. And this is basically what's happening along the front line currently right now in big areas. We have from the southern front some knowledge, some new data when it comes to artillery activity. The Ukrainians are reporting along the Dnipro, so shelling into Kherson, into the unoccupied Kherson area, has intensified, so it's a little stronger than in the past, but we were only talking about 60 to 70 shells a week, or 50 to 60 shells. So overall, this is not a heavy artillery bombardment, even though the Russians are continuing to use glide bombs in the area, and they have resumed using S-300 ground-to-air SAM systems, surface-to-air missiles, in a ground attack role in this area as well. That was already it from the front line. Basically no change whatsoever that's worth mentioning, while I have some two confirmed gains by the Ukrainians. They are not bigger than anything I've reported about the Russian successes over the last few weeks. When it comes to the mobilization, we have some new informations, or fourth generation, and here is the bigger news, or the somewhat bigger news. It shouldn't be too much of a surprise, but Ukraine has now confirmed that it's working on the Neptune ASM. That's the anti-ship missile, to turn it into a cruise missile against land targets. The Neptune was the missile that was used to sink the Moskva roughly a year ago. That a missile like this could be used to strike land targets is obvious and is basically self-inviting. So what is needed is to change the guidance system to make it search instead of ship, instead of naval targets, for a designated point, maybe with GPS coordinates, maybe with an inertial guidance system. Whatever difference in guidance system has to be done, it has to be implemented, and the Ukrainians have now confirmed they are working on it, and they are pretty close to completing their work, and that would allow them to strike targets at a distance of 360 kilometers. The head of the LNRs, the so-called Luhansk People's Republic here, Leonid Pasechnik, has signed a decree about the conscription in Luhansk. It's unclear how that is supposed to work, because not only is Luhansk no longer in quotation mark independent, it has been annexed by Russia. It's also that the conscription cycle has already started, but he signed a decree to start it on the 1st of April and to do another conscription cycle in fall. The forces of the Luhansk People's Republic are supposedly integrated into the Russian armed forces. So how Luhansk can do its own conscription is another question that is up here. And so far we have not seen, and we have not seen usage of conscripts in the war, except for the very first 2 months roughly. So that the Russians generally use conscripts is not the case as of now, but Luhansk might see it differently, obviously, as Russia is treating the whole annexed areas more or less as something like a colonial empire, not treating them equally. It's quite possible that the conscripted personnel there, the conscripted Ukrainians there, will be forced to fight against their own countrymen along the front line pretty soon. The Ukrainian General Staff is also saying the Russian Ministry of Defense is now moving the beginning of the education for becoming an officer in this fall in some of its officer schools from the 1st of September to the 1st of December, so several months later. This would be a sign of lack of capacities to train new officers, and at the same time it's obviously a horrible news for the Russian side, as their lack of leadership and the lack of qualified leadership is already hampering the Russian war efforts. So having less officers in the future seems to be a bleak outlook when it comes to the quality of the fighting personnel. When it comes to the international support, I have a picture here of the first Bradleys in Ukraine that already show the Ukrainian typical camouflage being used here. And we have 2 other things still left. This is an interesting thing. So the Ukrainians have modified a T-64 in some kind of armored personnel carrier. We see a lot of ERA added to it, but the back seems to be steel only, or at least that is what to be expected. It can actually be seen in operation here, being used around. So probably, and this is supposedly in Bakhmut, if I'm not completely wrong. Yes, in Bakhmut. So this heavily armored APC is apparently being used to help the Ukrainian efforts inside of Bakhmut itself. There is also another picture of the design which shows us that the hull is basically the same. So the regular composite armor of the T-64 has the added protection that should be contact 1 ERAs, and the new superstructure has a generous application of ERA as well. This should be the best armored APC in Ukrainian inventory, but obviously it had to be remodeled from an MBT that was likely no longer being able to be reinstated in its previous mission. And finally, we have another video of the Ukrainian side using netting probably to protect from Lancet drones. We've talked about it in the last situation report that the Russians have reportedly started to use Lancet drones for counter battery fire quite intensively, as it's allowing them to use it faster and more accurate than with regular artillery. And we've seen in the last situation report that the Ukrainians were using something like nets from fences from houses to protect their artillery. As of now, I cannot fully confirm how effective it's going to be, but at least the Ukrainians so far seem to believe that this is going to offer them effective protection. Today it's a little shorter, this situation report, because actually not that crazy much has happened. I still hope you enjoyed this, and leave a thumbs up, leave a comment for the algorithm, and if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. And this channel is only possible because of the support from viewers like you, so if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting the channel. This was it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.